It's almost time to see these Formula One cars back on track after a very long break where the teams weren't even able to work on the cars. And we got very little information about this season, but for 2026, we do have some stuff to go over. Talking about the cars themselves, Toto Wolff recently coming out and saying these cars have the potential to hit 400 kilometers per hour, but also the FIA director coming out himself and talking about the regulation period, how they're going to try and not have a repeat of what Mercedes did in this turbo hybrid era, which is quite concerning to hear what he has stated. It's very interesting, we'll go over it. And a decent amount more, a little bit about Aston Martin, Mercedes as well. It'll be interesting. Happy to be back, took a little bit of a break, much needed vacation, but missed you guys big time. If you are new here, please go ahead and subscribe. Plenty now to go over for the rest of this season, and as we're really getting into 26, I know we're still a bit away, but of course, it's fun to talk about it. Also, go check out the shirts if you're already here on Unchained Media Inc. Would mean the world to me. Let's get started with this video. I've talked a lot about these 2026 cars. I don't want to go over it again of this real overhaul we're getting for the regulation period. You guys do know that they are changing the floor, made a whole dedicated video to that. And in general with the engines, talked about that plenty. Really here, I want to go over what Toto Wolff has talked about, Felipe Drugovich a bit, a couple of interesting things to note. So Toto Wolff himself has gone and talked to AMUS, who has released articles stating the big question, can these 2026 cars hit 400 kilometers per hour? Now, the F1 record on track is 378 during the 2016 Baku GP, where a Williams, Valtteri Bottas himself, ended up getting to that high of a kilometer speed. And the unofficial record where Honda Bar actually made a car attempt to go 400 kilometers an hour only went up to 397.36 with a modified 2005 car in 2006. It was just in the middle of a desert, pretty much just had it straight lining, but the idea was to hit 400. And now we're coming to a point in Formula One where these cars all should be hitting around that range. But that does have a cause for concern, because if they're hitting that mark, and the biggest talking point around these cars is how they can really conserve the energy throughout a lap. It's more strategic than it is just driving, which I think isn't great. Now, if these cars have that much straight line speed, I doubt they'll be able to hold that for more than like a second or two, if that. And is it even worth it to get up to that point? That's also another question a lot of these teams are probably going to be looking into for qualifying laps, race, overtakes, and so on. It is triple the electric power we have right now. It's going to be drag reducing aero, so that helps out with that 400 kph that Toto Wolff is talking about. So ideally, tracks like Monza and Baku could become speedways. I mean, we could be seeing rocket ships down these straights, which Felipe himself, testing in the sims, has said the car on corner exits is like riding a rocket. Now, they are slower in general by 1 to 2.5 seconds, and there's been a definite debate on whether these cars will be trickier to use or not, but James Allison himself has came out and said a couple of few interesting details. He actually denied that the 2026 cars will be difficult to drive, which has been a big talking point for me and really in general across of X, news reporters, and F1 in general, that these cars should be trickier to drive. But a very famous and very reputable technical director has came out and said the handling will be more enjoyable, there will be less imbalance between slow and fast corners, and between corner entry and acceleration. It will be easier to keep understeer and oversteer where desired. Now, with these cars that we're currently in, they are very, very stiff, which makes them boat-like going into these slow speed corners. They're extremely fast in a high speed, and that's probably where these cars are best in comparison to the previous regs we've seen. But in slow speed, they lose so much time to even the previous regulations that we saw in 2021. And that also has to do with weight, which is getting reduced, but not by nearly enough. And putting this in words with what Felipe said, the car pushing out of corners like crazy, we should see a very quick formula, and these could possibly be the quickest cars by the time we get to, what is it, 2030? When this regulation period is done. And that's even a question if we get there. It depends on if it's going to actually be good or not. That's also important to note. We do also know that the Aston Martin team of Honda working on that engine has fired it up and heard it for the first time. It is roaring and they are doing good. All the data says they're doing pretty well. They're up to date to where they want to be, which is a big thing to even get an update like that. There have been also a couple reports talking about Red Bull Ford struggling. I have heard that as well. Audi has now been quiet as of lately, and for Ferrari, all the updates that we've heard has been from Vasseur, but very, very secretive, nothing like anything about the engine power and whether or not they're actually achieving those goals they're putting out. Now for Mercedes, this is a regulation period they've been looking forward to. All the data and really what they've been talking about points to they have a very strong engine. Can they actually work on the car being better and not being as tricky as it has been in this regulation period? Now that's another thing, because McLaren and Williams, if they do it correctly, they really could overtake Mercedes, which would be quite interesting to see. But with that being said, I did say in the beginning of the video, and I really wanted to talk about this, the FIA director has came out and put out a couple of ground rules as to what they're going to do during this regulation period to make sure there isn't a repeat of really that 2014 to 2021 Mercedes dominance. Now, even if you are a Lewis Hamilton fan, clearly it wasn't fun to see the same car win every single year. It gets quite boring in Formula One. But I don't think what he is suggesting here is really a great idea. The idea with Formula One is innovation. Now, if you start taking that away, then we don't have the same exact sport that we used to. What was explained to AMUS by Nicholas Tombazi is that every 6 races, the FIA will assess the average performance of each team. Those falling behind will get additional development opportunities, tailored to how far they are. Maybe they'll have a couple extra tests to see if an upgrade is going to work on the car, how much speed it will actually give them, to put them back up there with whatever car is going to be dominating the field, I guess, in that time period. Because the 3 key levers of help they will give them to catch up is extra budget for the development, extended time for spec homologation, and more dyno hours. And this will be during the season. The FIA will take that assessment and there will be the performances out there to see which cars need the help. Now, reading this is quite scary because I think it's not a great idea to take away that innovation and then really not celebrate the team that is doing good and got it correct. I mean, yes, it's not fun to see a car ahead of the field, but you have to respect it because everybody is given an equal opportunity. If they're now the ones ahead and they don't have that same opportunity as everybody else, I think it's already good to have a differential in the ATR time between obviously Sauber, who was 10th in this previous season, to McLaren. It shouldn't be even, but to do this, I'm not really sure how I feel about this. And Tombasis has also gone on to talk about the drivers needing to level up because these cars will be more strategic than the previous cars. And he kind of even talked about Michael Schumacher and how he did a balancing act when the steering wheels are changed, a lot more buttons were added, and so on. Because balancing energy management with flat out racing is going to be a key point in these regulations, and the FIA themselves have ensured that drivers aren't going to be overwhelmed. Some of these processes are going to be automated with on-dash displays showing energy status, and expect more freedom for attack and defense, which I think is a good thing, making racing definitely more dynamic in comparison to right now with this whole dirty air BS we're going through. Now, with DRS being out, there will be a boost button in. It's going to be tuned per track to balance overtaking's difficulty, which is interesting as well. Another element to look out for. And Tombasis has called this not DRS, but a bit like it, more flexible. And supposedly it's based on driver feedback in the sim. It also goes on to say that clever drivers might be able to exploit this and make more time up in certain areas. But that is always the case in Formula One. This is good. Let's have this open and actually give the drivers and teams attempts to make up more lap time or really those gaps in the race. Of course, it's still going to be about who can nail the lap correctly, but a couple of more elements I'm okay with as long as it's not going to be too extreme. As we come closer to this time period, it's very interesting what Nicholas talked about with regulating after every 6 races. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but the cars hitting 400 kph is not going to be something we see common, even with Toto Wolff talking about it. It's nice to see the cars are flying and apparently much easier to use. That is all pluses. But the energy management itself will probably keep these cars from really getting even close to that 400 kph in the race. Is it possible we see it from time to time, maybe in a practice session or something? It's possible. And that's not even talking about the slipstream, which should be not as big. These cars are in washing, so that's where a lot of this straight line speed is coming from. They're not going to have as much drag, so I will make that slipstream less effective than we do currently. But even in 25, it's been pretty bad because these cars have reduced so much drag from the previous years, like 2022, where they were very bulky and not that fast on the straights. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Tell me what you guys think about the new rules that have been implemented by Nicholas, the whole 6 races, but also what Toto Wolff has been quoting, what Felipe has been talking about, the most recent updates on Mercedes, Aston Martin, Red Bull themselves. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. I forgot to mention, Red Bull also, the Ford team will work on the car. That was pretty interesting hearing that. I'm not sure how much input they will have on the whole chassis and aero, but something I wanted to throw in towards the end. Thank you all for watching. Missed you guys. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.